Hey everyone, Spencer here, and welcome back to the Niche Pursuits podcast. Today I've got an interview with Tyler Bishop. He's actually the Chief Marketing Officer for Ezoic.com. And you may know Ezoic as a way to monetize your site. They help you manage display ads on your site, but they actually do a whole lot more. They have big data analytics. They have Site Speed Accelerator and a whole host of tools that helps you really optimize your site in general. What they're really known for is the artificial intelligence that they implement to help you optimize the placement and sizes of your display ads. So basically, there's machine learning and artificial intelligence going on in the background that helps move around and test and tweak your ad so that you're earning the most money possible. And so I brought Tyler on to talk about Ezoic and where it fits in the marketplace. We actually dive into how it compares to, say, Mediavine and Adthrive. And I found it really interesting that there are actually more large sites using Ezoic than there are on Mediavine or Adthrive. And so we're going to dive into that and some of just the business and the reasons why somebody might use something like Ezoic. Now, at the same time that this interview is released, so if you're watching this on the first couple of days when it's released, Ezoic has actually just opened up the doors to something called the Just Start program. And usually you need to have at least 10,000 page views to be able to apply. But with the Just Start program, they are allowing sites of any size to get on their platform. And they only open the doors for a short period of time because they don't want to have thousands of sites going through this. And what it is you have to go through a short training course. So you need to watch a few videos and take a very short quiz just to show that you understand what Ezoic is and how it works. And if you pass that quiz, then you can apply and get approved to the Just Start program. So it's really exciting thing for smaller sites. If you're just getting started, you can get a premium ad network with Ezoic. You can go to nichepursuits.com/Ezoic and you can apply to the Just Start program. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy the video. And of course, if you like the interview, please hit that like and subscribe button. So here's Tyler. Hey, Tyler, welcome to the Niche Pursuits podcast.
Thanks for having me on, Spencer. It's good to be here. I've listened to the podcast before, so it's fun to be on now on the other side of things.
Yep, absolutely. And it's great to have you on. I'm going to let people tell a little bit about your background and what you're doing now at Ezoic. But first, I do want to hear a little bit like leading up to how did you even get involved in Ezoic? Like, what's your background? What does it take for somebody to go from, high school to Ezoic?
Well, from me, there's quite a bit in there, but I can give you kind of the Cliff Notes version.
Sounds good.
Which will probably be the most entertaining one for those listening. But I grew up in actually rural Missouri. So for those unfamiliar, it's the middle of the United States. And I like to say that I was close to nothing. Because realistically, the way that you talk about where I'm from is you tell people how many hours from the next biggest city you can think of. And so I grew up there. My mother was a school teacher. And I graduated high school when I was really young. I skipped some grades. And my mother decided that it was probably best for my future education if I started university when I was younger than most of the other kids. And so I did, and I fell in love with a young woman while I was there. And along the way, I took communications classes, and one of the communications classes, we were learning about search engines and all kinds of other stuff. And I was told that that's not real marketing, but that's what I was really interested in. Jack Dorsey actually came to our university.
Awesome.
One of the founders of Twitter, and did this whole presentation about Twitter. And I was like, this is going to be huge. This is like the next big thing. And everybody was just kind of like, don't pay any attention to that. So I'm actually one of the very first, I think I'm one of the first 1,000 maybe Twitter users.
Wow.
And so in that experience, I got a chance to work for the school radio station, the school paper. And I had a friend that was a personal trainer, and he had gotten a job for a corporation doing corporate wellness. And I was like, hey, you know what? Seems like they make a lot more money than a normal personal trainer. So I'm going to use these outlets that I have as a part of a class, the newspaper and the radio station, to try to get myself a job as a corporate personal trainer. And I did. And I did it through a website that I'd promote. And then I did a story about how I used a website to basically churn up this business, created an online business. And a gentleman who was a partner at Edward Jones at the time was looking to start a business. And he decided that he needed somebody that was savvy digitally to help him start this business. And I was ready to get married and in love. And so I was like, I'm your man. And so I convinced the university that I was a super genius. I was some young whiz kid that graduated high school real early. So let me take the max amount of credit hours I can so that I can finish school, work basically all my time on this business, so that I could, get married and grow this company. And that's exactly what I did. And so I graduated school just a few years after starting, got married, and that business ended up being a platform like any entrepreneur will tell you, or anybody that's, started a business or been a part of a startup will tell you, is, it's a platform for learning in a lot of respects. And even though we did experience quite a bit of success ultimately, and we exited that company, I would say, one good idea for every 9 bad ones, And
Right.
from there, I got involved in several other startups in St. Louis. I met some very, very smart engineers. I can say that I've got several mentors that I've learned a lot from over the years, and ultimately ended up working with a couple different companies, and then worked for Microsoft briefly as a part of an exit, and did not love that. Managing huge teams of people globally is not the most fun thing in the world for me personally.
Mm-hmm.
And then around that time, my wife and I were very interested in moving to San Diego, and just through success in the world of startups, I'd gotten connected to Dwayne LaFleur, who, if you'll go back in time and remember maybe Farmville for Facebook, where people would exchange
Mm-hmm.
real currency for digital currency to buy tractors and things like that online. Dwayne he created basically the first developer ad network for Facebook, and his company was bought and acquired. And so along the way, he'd basically come up with the idea for Ezoic, and I thought it was genius. And so after talking with Dwayne, the company had already been started for several years, him and several engineers and a gentleman by the name of John Cole. And, the rest they say is history. I moved to California, and we started it in a humble beginnings office up in Carlsbad. And it's been a rocket ship of growth over the last decade. And we've pioneered a lot of things in this space. And there's a lot of things that we've done that, at the time I said, this will never catch on, or, I don't know if we'll be on the side of things in terms of the ecosystem of where it goes. And so far, we've been on the right side of all those things. And it's been a long journey, but it's been a really fun one.
Yeah. So to give people a time frame there, you obviously did a lot before you got to Ezoic, but when did you join Ezoic? How long you been there now?
Just over 5 years. So I moved here in 2015 and started working for the company. And that was really right around the time that our platform sort of evolved, and we started having additional products. For those that are or maybe aren't overly familiar with Ezoic, we're a machine learning platform. That's kind of like our beginnings. It's like our core is using machines to basically scale the types of optimizations that normally were up to people and lots of tests and data. And it originally started by doing just layouts, just completely testing what you would think of as like a WordPress template or a theme or something like that, and testing a lot of them. And ultimately, like a lot of publishers didn't like that. They didn't like that their site changed, even if it lowered the bounce rate or, made more money. Publishers spend a lot of time on their websites. And so
Right.
we ultimately, right around 2015 is when we launched Ad Tester, which basically applies the same methodology, but just to the ad placements, location, size, density, that sort of thing. And that was really a turning point for us in a lot of different respects.
Yeah. So you're now the CMO, the Chief Marketing Officer there, correct?
Yeah, that's right. It's one of those things where it was just me for a while, and now next thing you know, you turn around, you've got a lot of people behind you, making you look good, and that's the goal, right?
Absolutely. I agree. So we're going to spend a lot of time talking about Ezoic, but before I do, I just want to fill in the other gaps there. I was listening to your story. You talked about a few different companies that you helped and worked for. Do you have any of your own businesses that you're either have done and exited or you're working on right now? Anything you want to share there briefly?
Yeah, so my first company, Livenue, that was an exit. We were very similar to the Gallup organization, and so that obviously became a huge company. Over time, we were not in necessarily a position to really grow in that respect, and had some kind of areas where we were restricted, and so ultimately that was a successful exit. There's been several other companies that I've had a small piece of, and we've either sold the business or I sold my shares to other owners. But now, probably as it relates to things outside of Ezoic, I'm a publisher in a lot of respects, just like probably a lot of your audience. So I own and operate several websites, many of which I just beat up for fun for different Ezoic projects and things along those lines. But everything from jiu-jitsu to injuries to mezcal to trying to think of some of the other ones, just the internet at large, some stuff on marketing that I've just started as well. So several different enterprises there, and I've built a few small web applications and things like that may end up one day being something that some small micro SaaS or something like that, but mostly just things that I mess around with out of interest.
So you got quite a bit going on as well. You're dabbling on the side in addition to your full-time role there at Ezoic. So you're a hustler. People on the Niche Pursuits podcast love that, man. It's that's kind of right. What I do as well, and so you're one of the group here for sure.
Yeah, I'm also an amateur magician. I've officiated 4 weddings. And I also do the commentary for the World Jiu-Jitsu Championship and several other large Jiu-Jitsu championships. And those are just kind of like weird gigs that I've gotten into because people have asked me, or, you're just in the right place the right time. And I've gotten better at saying no to things as I've gotten older. But when I was young, man, you know how it goes. Any opportunity, the answer is yes.
Yep. That's awesome, man. Very cool. So let's dive into Ezoic a little bit. I mean, you kind of explained, what Ezoic kind of started out in with, sort of testing layouts and almost like a theme tester, right? What is Ezoic today? If you were to just people that have never heard of what Ezoic is, give them a 1 or 2 minute snippet of this. This is Ezoic. This is what it does.
Yeah, so I would probably describe it in, these are marketing terms, so I apologize, everybody. But I would describe it as probably like an end-to-end platform for publishers, meaning digital publishing has grown far more complex than it's been ever. I mean, in the last decade, you've started to have to worry about things like speed, mobile readiness, CDNs, GDPR, CCPA, privacy, SSLs. These are all things that were either optional or something you didn't even have to consider before. Not to mention the fact that the ad ecosystem and the way that sites are monetized has gotten far more complex, and it creates this huge chasm between basically somebody that's a startup, starting a site, or maybe just an independent publisher with 1 or 2 employees or writers on staff, and major enterprises. And so this creates an area where it's impossible for one person, even myself, somebody that's worked in this space for a very long time, to be an expert in all those things. And so one of the things that we really believe in, and that is that your best interests are ultimately what you want to use to drive the decisions that you make. And the problem is when that's outsourced or given to a third party, your best interests aren't always aligned. And so one of the things that machines do really well is machines can make decisions almost as good as people can. So if you need to make a decision, but it doesn't have to be quite as good as the decision you make, but almost as good, machines are great at that. And the problem with people is, let's say you need to make 2,000 decisions and you need to do that in 24 hours. There's no way of doing it, but the machines can do that. And so machine learning is really something that we've been working on for a decade. People use that word. They use AI all the time and they don't mean it. We mean it. We really use it. And so we've built a lot of free tools, a lot of other applications and stuff like that inside of a single platform where publishers can actually use that to basically give themselves enterprise level implementation of all these things. And monetization, I would say, is what we're known for. 95%, probably most 95% of our customers probably know us is that primarily. And it's because we're so effective at it. And yeah, I mean, it used to be you had your choice of AdSense or outsourcing to an ad ops shop or hiring an ad ops person. And now you don't need to do any of those things. And so, yeah, that's Ezoic in a nutshell.
Yeah. So there's a lot there. Like you said, I think most people know Ezoic as a monetization platform, but it does a lot more. I mean, I use Ezoic on my case study site, ontheyard.com, and other sites as well. And so I can see what's in there with all the analytics, with the site speed accelerator, with just everything else. You know, I do run it through the CDN as well. And so there's a lot in there that people can navigate, but let's maybe focus on the monetization just because that's what everybody knows it for the most part. And of course, I'll let you squeeze in other things as they apply here as well. But you kind of alluded to ad op shops and other third-party providers that don't give you as much control. You kind of highlighted that, hey, it's probably in your best interest if you are controlling, you know, you set up your ads, you control where they go, and then let the AI optimization sort of do its thing. So let's name some names here. We're talking, you know, people like Mediavine, AdThrive. Those are, you know, some of the places where you go and they set up the ads for you, and you know, hopefully they optimize them the best they can, right? That's what they do, and it's very hands off, right? You basically give them a login to your site and they set it all up for you. So that's a plus, but you're saying that maybe the minus is you lose some of that control. Maybe you can speak to that just a little bit.
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's multiple minuses to it. And so one of the things I like to always back up on this is, you know, the parties that you mentioned, like I see them as competitors in the same way I see something like AdSense or just ad exchanges in general as a competitor. Is the only reason why someone would use an ad op shop as opposed to a platform like Ezoic is because they don't allow split testing. Use your imagination. There's a reason why people don't want you to test something. It's ad networks for the longest time have done this. And this is like one of the core things that we've built the platform for. So when we say we have our kind of roots in machine learning and monetization, it's because, you know, even going back 5 or 6 years, we couldn't imagine the ecosystem would still be in the shape that it's in. So much of it's still black box and overly complex. And you have all these different parties with their hands in the pie and you don't know where the money goes. And so one of the core things that we built into Ezoic from the very start was the ability to basically like proxy your traffic and split it fairly 50-50, 20, 80, wherever you want to go. But even if you're just using something like AdSense, which you can link to Ezoic. So Ezoic includes access to Google's ad exchange, which is usually not something most publishers have access to unless you're 50 million plus visits minimum, which you're going to get through your Google Ad Manager, formerly known as DFP account. And then access to header bidding, thousands of header bidders, which is like another layer of complexity that's come along over the years to basically compete with Google's very dominant Ad Exchange, and there are others, and those are also included with Ezoic. So we go out and we source all of that demand, meaning like the ads that actually where the ads come from. And we see that as a commodity. This is what the, you mentioned AdThrive, Mediavine, there's a bunch of them. Those are, depending on what corner of the internet I'm in, there's different ones that kind of like specialize in different areas. And so, I see that as you're outsourcing to somebody that's, all those things are the same to me. Because it's the exact same ad demand that you get with something like Ezoic. There's direct deals and PMP deals that you can get through with brands, but we set those up for our sites as well. And that's the thing. I think that people think that switching in between all these different parties, there's something unique that's happening where the ads are coming from a more valuable place. And that's not really how ad buying, ad bidding works. And the point of it is that ad inventory value is built over time based on a lot of different factors that I think maybe people probably don't understand. That's the challenge, is that it's not necessarily worth it to fully understand unless you want to really be into ad ops, which is a dying job title because of machine learning and automation and things like that. And so one of the things that Ezoic does and gives people the ability to control is basically optimizing for each visitor. So each visitor, think of it as supply and demand. Each advertiser is going to bid on a visitor differently, meaning there may be more advertisers bidding on me and less advertisers bidding on my sister in St. Louis. Could be geographically, could be the fact that she has kids and I don't. And maybe there's a lot of advertisers that are after somebody that has more disposable income to maybe go out to dinner. You've got a bunch of restaurants eager to get back to it. And so the demand may be higher for me. So it may not benefit that site to show me the same number of ads, let's say, even if all the same locations, whatever. The density may actually impact their bids. And by restricting that for me, they may drive up their bids over time. And that's something that's very valuable. And publishers, for the longest period of time, have a really hard time seeing that long tail. Machines are really good at that, and they're very disciplined at it. And so I think it's one of the areas where I would probably caution a lot of publishers, and that is basically trying to take more control of your ad inventory value and then being able to test stuff. If somebody doesn't want you to test something, there's a reason why. If they want to lock you into a contract, there's a reason why. These are old. These are things that used to exist that we'd almost gotten rid of, but now they've moved down a tier. They don't work with the enterprises anymore. They've moved down to small to medium-sized sites, and the same things are still at play.
So I run a Facebook group for niche pursuits that you're aware of. A lot of people are there talking all sorts of things about optimizing sites, publishing, blogging, and Ezoic versus AdThrive versus Mediavine. It comes up a lot. People are under the impression, at least this is what I hear in my Facebook group, that, hey, when you get started out and you have less than 50,000 page views, Ezoic's great. Go there, monetize your site. But when you have over 50,000, you should graduate and go to Mediavine, because that's where you're going to get the highest payouts. And then, once your site hits 100,000 page views a month, you should graduate to AdThrive, right? I want you to address this a little bit. And is it just marketing on Mediavine and AdThrive's part that, hey, we are more exclusive because we only allow sites that get 50,000 page views, or we're more exclusive still because we only allow you if you get 100,000 page views. And so when you come, you should feel like you're getting a premium experience. So maybe address that. And I know you have some numbers about how Ezoic, or how many sites are using Ezoic that maybe are over this 100,000 page view mark and that sort of thing. So address that concern, because that's perhaps the biggest concern that I hear in my Facebook group all the time, that, hey, when you're small, go to Ezoic. When you're big, go to Mediavine, AdThrive.
Yeah, so would love to address it. It's probably one of the like I internally, I use this because I don't mean to like trivialize it to anyone, but I call it like the worst bro science that exists in our space. Because one of the questions that I think people should always be asking with anything as it relates to like information that's shared between like groups of publishers anywhere on the web, which there's a lot of places that people go and get information, but I would say publishers really like getting info from each other. And I think that's one of the things I enjoy about, kind of your group and some of the different programs that you've had and some of the guests you've had on your show is, you have people that have actually done these things, but can kind of fill you in why something works or why it doesn't. And that's a question that people should be asking is why are these things, why is this the case? So if I start with something like Ezoic and then I move to Adthrive or a Mediavine or any other party and someone makes more money, why? Like, what was the difference? That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
And I do. I know the difference. And you can actually go and find these things out for yourself without having to have any kind of extra knowledge. There's a number of different extensions out there. Google just launched one. It's not perfect, but you can actually see where the ads come from. And so for the majority of the two parties that you mentioned, the majority of the ads served on all the sites I've seen are through Ad Manager, Google Ad Manager, which means it's Google AdX, which is, I would say, if you look at even an enterprise site like CNN.com or Mashable or, you name it, almost all the ads that are filled programmatically on a display network are from Google's Ad Exchange. Google has a great business. I've got to say, that's why Congress wants to talk to them a little bit more about it, is because it is so dominant. Because if you think about it, if I'm an advertiser, which I am and have been for a long time, if you want to show display ads, it's really, really difficult to say you're going to get any kind of realistic, good campaign coverage without using someone like Google. So it's where the majority of budgets go. And so it's rare that you find advertisers in bulk that are spending lots of money in places not Google. And usually the reason why you spend money other places is because you want to spend less,
right,
not more.
Yep.
And so that's where the majority of the ads are coming from. So if ads are all a commodity, then what else is the difference? Well, one is, and this is an area that I've spent a lot of time on, so that kind of progression of Ezoic, Mediavine, Adthrive specifically, that stems, I think, in large part from a group online called the Income School, who do an awesome job of kind of selling a course to people just getting started. And that was sort of their take on how things worked. And so I actually met with them because I was really interested in kind of digging into some of their data and where they were coming up with some of that. And it turns out it was subjective, and they'd had actually a bad experience with us a long time ago. And that was on us. I mean, they had a sales rep that's actually no longer with the company that wasn't great and just didn't do a great job of like tending to them. And so we worked with them on basically saying like, hey, look, we would love to do a case study and then share the data with you and your members so that, you can like say like with certainty, these guys are true or not true. And we'll share all the data so you can see it back and forth. So we just finished a 6-month study with them looking at sites that basically had used Ezoic and either moved from us to one of those outsourced ad op shops. And basically we wanted to look at 3 months worth of data before leaving, their average EPMV. So that's revenue that they make per visitor. EPMV is earnings per mil visitors. Mil means 1,000 in advertising because it makes tons of sense, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And yeah, so we looked at that as the average, and then we looked at the next 6 months with Ezoic, which of course includes, as soon as we started this study, the pandemic. So we were like immediately like, great, this is going to not be great for us. Fortunately for us, Ezoic's machines are really good at what they do. And in June and July, largely a lot of the ad rates recovered. And so looking at the data that I've got now, I actually just shared this study with them earlier this week. And basically, Ezoic on all the sites that we looked at that came back from those ad op shops, they were making 46% more with Ezoic, showing as many or fewer ads, and in almost every case, fewer. And that's the big key. So two
Mm-hmm.
things are the reason why someone would leave something like Ezoic and then make more money. Number one is you show more ads.
Right.
It seems counterintuitive. People are like, oh, Ezoic shows so many ads, but it's because the machines are testing and they're putting placements in spots where advertisers are going to increase or decrease bids over time based on historical data. That's how bidding works. So if I come to a site and we take away an ad today, I'm probably going to earn lower RPM on that page. So revenue from all the CPMs, what an advertiser bids for that ad on the page.
Right. Makes sense.
But if I'm really valuable, the advertisers will eventually start bidding more for the limited spots, because what happens is if I'm really valuable, the advertiser goes, you know what? I used to be able to bid $3 CPM and be able to get this sidebar spot, but now there's only one sidebar spot and there used to be two. So now I need to bid 4. Oh, wait, now I need to bid 5. And that's what actually gets me on the page. That's what makes me the winning bid. So you can actually show fewer ads over time. Now, Ezoic does this automatically. So one of the things that really works against us here is if we build ad inventory for someone over time, which this takes usually, depending on your traffic, it might take 6 to 8 weeks before you start making a meaningful difference in terms of just the ad rates. The ad demand is great. Like I said, when you get Ezoic, you get thousands of header bidders in AdX, so people make more money than something like AdSense or pretty much anything else right off the bat. But it's really building that ad inventory over time. We have sites that are 3 years old and their revenue EPMV is like, it's linear. And it's because the machines continue to do this over time. Now, if you leave Ezoic while we've built your ad inventory value up, because ads are bought and sold based on historical data, you leave, somebody shows more ads. Well, those ads, even though the spots are no longer restricted, the advertisers are still bidding what they were bidding before. So it looks like you're making these way higher RPMs, but you need to be looking at EPMV because session earnings could actually be going down. And not only that, you should look at your RPS, EPMV. We are the ones that pioneered that metric, and now everyone uses it because we highlighted how RPMs can be manipulated and people can be tricked. But ultimately, you'll see everywhere else, people just stay flat or they go down. And it's because no attention is given to basically increasing the ad inventory value over time. So you leave Ezoic, you didn't have it set up properly. You didn't have a lot of placeholders on the page. You didn't have your AdSense linked. You didn't have an ads.txt file. These are things that some of these other parties will set up for you. So you're already at a deficit. They come in, they show more ads. They put them in places where it's hard to find them. The advertisers bid more. We've built your ad inventory value. It makes sense. But that's the thing is over time, you'll perform better. Your best interest will be taken care of with something like Ezoic. And that's why we've been able to show when sites come back, they earn more. And of course, in this study, we took the time to make sure that everybody was set up properly. And that's something I think we have to get a lot better at.
Yeah. Yep. No, there's a lot to be said there. So how many sites were part of this case study that you did? How many?
So there was 19.
Okay.
There was 19 that finished the full 6 months, which is not a lot. But I mean, to start with, we wanted to only include sites that started at the same time, that we could look at the same data. And it was actually tough to convince those 19 sites because they were, there's this like thought that you make it, and
right.
I hate that. I really hate it. I mean, I hate this idea that the number of page views that you have is something that advertisers care at all about, because truthfully, I mean, I think sites think that like big sites are sites that earn 50,000 or 100,000 page views per month. That's considered in the industry. That's still a very small site.
Right.
It's not until you're, well over 1 million that someone might say you're a medium-sized publisher. And so, I mean, you can look at a tool like Built With, which is free. It's got a Chrome extension. I highly recommend it to publishers. You can see what any website is built with, meaning like what CMS are they using? Are they using WordPress? What plugins are they using? All that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it also gives you aggregate data on what size sites and what types of sites are using different technologies. And you can look at something like Ezoic. Not only do we have more customers at large, but publishers that are over 500,000, over 1 million in the Alexa top 500, top 1,000, top 10,000. Ezoic has far more customers. And I think it's because the longer you've been doing some of these things, which obviously a lot of publishers that are that size have been doing it for a long time, you realize just, how unfair it seems to give 20 to 25% of your revenue away to somebody that's basically just giving you access to ad demand that you want, that you can't quite get on your own or don't want to take the time to set up, even if you can.
Yeah, so I want to clarify 2 points. One, with the case study that you did, these 19 sites were on a competitor and then moved to Ezoic for 6 months and or some time period and increased, I think you said 46 or 49% their ad revenue.
46%. And there's a couple in there that are outliers. We had, a few. We've got one that had 177% increase. The lowest was 13. And then we had one that was basically flat. It was negative 1%, but they're showing fewer ads and they were happy with that. But at large, it was 46.65%.
That's awesome.
And everything in between there as well. And I think one of the things that we learned along the way there is just how much better of a job we need to do from a platform standpoint of making it very, very simple, very, very easy for publishers to be as hands-on or as hands-off as they'd like to be. I think a lot of people are like, hey, Tyler, you keep selling this like idea of control, but I don't want to do any of these things myself. And so that's fine. I think we want to make the platform to where your best interests are taken care of with the flip of a couple switches, and you're not giving away this huge portion of your revenue to somebody to do all the same stuff. And then, one of the things I find over and over again is the longer that somebody is doing this, the more and more they want to do more. Like you mentioned early on, like analytics, being able to dive into things a little bit deeper and stuff like that, and being able to give people the controls to do a lot of different things like that as they grow and decide they want to try something new.
Yeah, and so then the other thing that I just wanted to clarify that you mentioned is, so if you use tools like BuiltWith to see what people are running on their sites, you say that there are a greater number of sites over, call it the 100,000 or 500,000 page view a month using Ezoic when compared to an AdThrive or Mediavine.
Yeah, and I mean, you could say, to play devil's advocate even against that, which is, it's true, you could say, well, because Ezoic's a platform and Ezoic basically, like any publisher can come and use Ezoic, we're bound to have more or something along those lines. And those parties, you have to apply and then they accept you or not. Like, it's a scale problem for them because they have people doing it. Right. Even if you outsource all your work someplace and you make it really simple so that, pretty much any, outsourced person could do it. It still gets to the point to where it's hard to scale for them. And I think that that's part of the case that's going on there with some of that. But even when you take that into account, I look at that as a risk from the standpoint of realistically, like if we think that people are going to do this in 5 years, in 4 years, in 3 years, I don't think that we're looking at the way that things are trending. And my God, Ezoic has such a head start when it comes to using machines and AI and things along those lines. And because of our growth, we got 33 million in growth funding last year, which means that we didn't need money. We've been profitable for, I think, the last 4 or 5 years. That's money so that we can hire engineers, so that we can grow our support teams and stuff like that, so that we can basically grow as fast as our platform is. And I think that that's something that publishers can take some amount of comfort in from the standpoint of, go back and look at the history of this business. The people that we're talking about now that we're competing with, those people were different 3 years ago, and they'll be different 3 years from now. Right. And it's because they get bought and sold. They go in and out of favor with different types of publishers. And we kind of sit here in this spot where it's like everything that you need, we want to make it easily and accessible to all publishers. I don't think there's any need for anything to ever be exclusive. If you can get access to something like AdSense, you should be able to get access to everything else that any of these guys would offer you.
So yeah, I love the points that you're making there. For people listening, I mean, they can kind of just take that information as they will, right? Whether that provides comfort or just more data in their decision, right? That hey, there are tons of huge publishers on the Ezoic platform. There's not some magic that AdThrive and Mediavine are using to, earn more money, if you will.
I mean, big brands use Ezoic. I mean,
Yeah,
Hearst is one of the largest publishers in the world.
well known. Yeah.
Popular Mechanics, Cosmopolitan, American Media Group. You've got Men's Journal. Like these are all parties where they skeptical and then used Ezoic and then they continued using it. And
Mm-hmm.
these are teams that have ad ops people on staff. And so this has been this is not just something that's like, oh, well, we'll use Ezoic and, but once you get big enough, you can use something better. The materials and the access to ad networks, exchanges from a monetization standpoint that you get with Ezoic is exactly the same stuff that you're seeing, quote unquote, the big guys use.
Yeah. That's awesome. So one other question that comes up that I'll let you address again in my Facebook group or that I've just heard is that Ezoic hurts site speed. I signed up for Ezoic and then my site speed tanked once, all the ads went up or I had, some issues that caused the site to slow down. So what do you say to that concern? Again, I know you're well aware that one comes up quite a bit. What do you say to that one?
Yeah, so one of my heroes is Mark Twain, and Mark Twain's he grew up about half an hour from where I grew up, and so when I was in school, you got to go on like one field trip, and you got to go on it like 10 times over the course of your your rural Missouri education, and you went to his hometown. And one of my favorite Mark Twain quotes was, "It's easier to fool people than to convince them they've been fooled," and at Ezoic, from day one, I've always said, I'm not going to be a marketing guy. We're going to basically be educators. And it's an uphill battle in this space. And site speed is an area where I think even people that feel like they have a good grasp on it, myself included, would say that there's all kinds of nuances and complexities to it that just make it a huge pain in the butt. And Google doesn't make it any easier on anyone.
Right.
That said, all ads slow websites down, whether you're talking about AdSense or, something more complex where you're setting up header bidding and ad exchange and everything else. The more complex the setup, the more latency and things like that you're going to get. And the reason is because you're waiting for bidders, calls are going out to multiple different places and things along those lines. Google itself is slow. Single tab networks like AdSense, or if you just put like one single ad network where you have like an ad tag or an auto ad script or something like that on your page, those things it's making a single call, so it's slightly faster. But I actually just took my jiu-jitsu site and I uploaded a blank HTML page. So no WordPress, no nothing. And I put Google Analytics on it. Just Google Analytics took it from a 100 score, just being blank, to like 91 on mobile. Wow. And then I added Facebook Pixel and I added an image, and that brought it down to like 85. And then I threw in AdSense auto ad script in the header along with that, and it brought it down to the 40s.
Wow.
So it gives you an idea of just how much ads will slow sites down. Now, that being said, Ezoic should make a site faster showing ads than it could ever be otherwise. And that's just out of the box. So if you integrate with us, one of the things that we do is we're big proponents of name server or Cloudflare integration, which is server level integration. It's how pretty much every person that's writing a book on header bidding and basically any kind of like complex ad setup right now is talking about server side bidding and things like that. There's a lot of benefits to it.
Right.
But outside of that, you've got the fact that Ezoic offers a free CDN if that's enabled, along with caching being set up properly. So there's multiple types of caching. People think because they have a caching plugin on a WordPress site, like they've got does the job. But you have browser caching, which means if somebody's visited your site before, they don't have to reload all the assets. If you have the cache policy not set to, something like an hour or something silly, as long as it's not like a forum. And then you've got like the CDN cache, which is, you have your host, and then you have all the mirror versions that happen across the world on a CDN, so people can access like a more local copy. And as long as that cache policy is good, you can access those, which is faster. So if you don't have those things enabled, and Ezoic has to call back to your host origin every single time, it's going to take longer as well. So a lot of these things are settings, and it comes back to what I was talking about earlier about like getting things set up properly. And I think speed has been one of the most difficult ones. It's a lot like a vaccine, if you will. And that is that the things that it takes to build a vaccine that works for all people is very difficult, because you have to test it. And maybe at 1,000 people, you find it to be safe and everyone gets the benefit, but then you roll it out to 10,000 and people start getting really sick, or a couple people break down and God forbid they die, right? Mm-hmm. That's if you implement like all one size speed implementations on every site, you're going to start seeing that a lot of sites start failing, basically. Like it's going to break them, it's going to break the framework, whatever. So Ezoic has built the Site Speed Accelerator, which I think we get hammered on this, but most of the features are free. Like the gross majority of features, which are paid elsewhere, are free with Ezoic. If you enable all of those, you enable the CDN, and you integrate at the name server level, and you don't have silly cache policies set because you've got a plugin or something like that that's setting these for you, which is super common. I wrote my own support article for it because I was just unhappy with how well we were solving this problem. And if you implement those things, Ezoic will be as fast as anything else there is, bar none, when showing ads. And our Site Speed Accelerator has some paid features, which you have to pay for elsewhere, and they're cheaper with Ezoic because it takes compression, it takes storage and things like that. You can buy those things, and it'll make your site 80, 90 score on mobile, and that's with showing ads. And go throw your favorite news publisher in a site speed tool and see what you get. I'm sure that there's somebody there that's like working overtime every day, but it's an uphill battle there because the guy that's working on speed has to battle in the boardroom with a guy that's working on squeezing every last dollar out of his site. And that's the benefit of publishers using Ezoic, is all these, you can kind of just use a slider. You can adjust these things. Like, what's more important to you, the speed or the revenue? You can make that choice. It's easy.
Yep. I love it. There's a ton of options, a ton of features that we could go into with Ezoic. I think we've gotten a good overview here. People can check that out on their own time there. But just kind of a final question here for you, kind of looking forward with the publishing and blogging space in general. We're hearing more and more about even artificial intelligence writing articles, right? And being smart enough with natural language processing to produce content that feels like it was written by a human. And so looking forward, where do you see the publishing and blogging industry going? And are you still bullish on blogging?
So I am. So, people that have heard me in other interviews, I just finished a profile piece in Adweek, where they were basically profiling me for professional things. And, one of the questions they had asked me, like, if you were to start any business right now as an entrepreneur, what would it be? And I said it would be in the publishing space, because I think we're in the golden age of publishing, and I mean that. So even to me, that's where the complexity is the industry's greatest risk, is because what makes publishing great is that any person now, because of all the amazing technologies that exist, you think about in 2008, if you want to start a website, like, it's really, really hard to be a publisher unless you know some HTML, like you can set up your own hosting and a lot of other stuff. You're probably paying somebody. Like, it's hard. Today, you can set up a WordPress site. You don't have to do any coding. you can start publishing tomorrow and start writing content. And if you write great content over time, you can make a lot of money on that. And if you're a good digital marketer, you can expedite that process. Now, that being said, you mentioned AI and them writing articles. So this is something we thought a lot about because, obviously we're really good at this, especially in this space. What people don't realize about machine learning and AI is machine learning and AI, like there's broad artificial intelligence, which my guess, and this is just what I hear, there's a very small handful of labs globally that probably are light years ahead of everyone else. And who knows what they're doing? I mean, they're probably not focused on writing articles, but the ones that are, artificial intelligence and machine learning really need to be specified to a specific task. And you can think of them a lot like children. They have to be taught. And so you can't just jump in and say, machine learning, do this or do that. Like, you have to teach it, and you need lots of data. And we've been giving machines lots of data for years and years. And I'm not really that bullish on machines just writing articles. When you really think about what would need to take place there, that does not include like scraping content or basically stealing like other resources and things like that. There's things that can be done. Like, you can take like AI and make it write up, the college course offerings for journalism in the United States or something like that. And it could do something relatively good. Anybody that's ever connected their Google Analytics to one of those tools that sends you emails and it's like, your website got 2,000 sessions this month, which is up 1,000 from the previous month. Like, you can get AI to write stuff like that with a data source. But where I actually see it being really beneficial to publishers is the ability to make smart decisions using data. So SEO is a black box that I hate, because I see even if somebody has a crazy crackpot theory and they build an entire, software platform or something like that around it, you can't say, hey, this is all junk science, because, whether Google confirms it or not, you don't know, because you can't necessarily trust Google outright, and that's been proven. So, what do you do with that kind of information? And I think what you can do is you can use AI, machine learning to populate the right directions and the right types of data, so that publishers have like a structure, an outline of where they can go with things and understand what the ROI might be. And then the other side of that is with things like video and just the incredible access that we have to information. I found something today where it would basically take, my wife and I have a podcast, one of the many other things that I do related to jiu-jitsu. And I was like, you know what, we should really embed those in articles. And I was going to, pull down the transcriptions from YouTube and have her go through them and put heading tags in them and all that kind of stuff. And then I found a tool that basically plain language uses NLP, natural language processing, through Google Cloud to basically take that transcription, and it basically flips it into an article. So it's taken the things that I've said in my podcast and transcribed it in a way that's pretty readable. And now I just have to edit it. So it's sped up that process for me exponentially. And I think that that's one of the areas where publishers, especially small independent ones, can start a podcast, start a YouTube channel, start a blog, and then use one piece of content to scale across these other mediums that people might be interested in, and then use the data on how that performs to figure out, do I create more podcasts? Do I create more video? Like, what do I do? So I see it as something that it's a growth tool for publishers, and hopefully we're a piece of that moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. I'm still bullish on publishing. I have to agree with all the tools that are coming out. It is so much easier. And I did try to start sites in 2008, and it was a lot harder. You're right. It's super easy now. I mean, you don't have to be technical, really. I mean, if you're a great writer, like you are far and above anybody that has great technical skills that is not a great writer, right? So I agree. There's a lot of great advancements, especially with machine learning and artificial intelligence. It'll be exciting to see where it goes over the next few years. I'm excited to be a part of it. So thanks for sharing your thoughts on that. Tyler, we're going to wrap it up here. Any closing thoughts, just whether that's motivational or just parting words that you want to share with people, that are listening on the Niche Pursuits podcast?
Yeah, so I two things I'll add. One is to kind of piggyback the one piece of advice that I give publishers that are listening. It's to your point about like if you're far and away a great writer, you have such an advantage in this. It's if you're a publisher, there's a good chance that you're good at something as it relates to publishing, whether it's development or infrastructure or probably writing in a lot of respects. Like focus on your strengths. You don't have to be great at everything because of the way that technology has progressed. There's somebody that's already made it easy to do those parts that you hate, and you don't have to outsource it. And writing is something you can scale, but it doesn't mean you have to stop doing it. And the other side of that is one of the things I'm really passionate about is this idea of basically trying to eliminate middlemen. And a big part of that is allowing sites that are just in that growth stage the ability to basically start doing a lot of the things so that they can grow faster. That means access to revenue, access to tools, access to information that previously were only available to people that could, get the attention of somebody at an ad network or something like that. And so one of the things we've been experimenting with at Ezoic is something we call Just Start. It's a course where we teach publishers, a lot of the subjects that we've touched on here today. But beyond that, we basically, once you complete the course, we give you access to Ezoic and our full platform, all the monetization features, which anybody that's listening to this and is somewhat familiar with the monetization space, that Ezoic typically we have a low threshold for page views, but it's a quality thing. It allows us to basically keep out a lot of bad actors, and also it allows our team to scale support and service. But ultimately, our platform shouldn't need people and support and service all that much for publishers to serve themselves, especially if they have a base level of education. And so Just Start is a program that we unroll. We usually roll in a class of about 300 to 400 publishers at a time. And once they go through, they get access to the platform. And so far, it's been excellent, and publishers have been really happy. So if you're starting some sites or you're just getting started in general in publishing, be a program to keep an eye out for.
Yep, definitely. And I know that you guys kind of have limited time where you open that up. And so for people listening in, I'll make sure this link goes to that if it's open. If you guys want to check it out, it's at nichepursuits.com/Ezoic. So we will, I think when we release this interview in the first day or so, it will be open. I think we're going to try and time it so it releases at the same time.
Awesome.
So people can go to that if they're listening to that, right now. If it's, past that time, you can still go to that link, and I'll make sure it goes to whatever the best page that Ezoic has, either to join or learn more or anything like that. So go to nichepursuits.com/Ezoic to check that out. But Tyler, it's been great having you on the podcast. Get to know a little bit more about you and hear your thoughts on just the publishing industry in general as well. If people want to get in touch with you or follow along with what you're doing, is there a place they should go?
Yeah, so I always I give it's terrible advice. Everyone tells me to stop doing this, but I just give out my email address to everybody, because if you're a customer, a prospective customer, and anything I've said you want to argue with me, or you think that I'm incorrect or that's not been your experience, I always tell people reach out. I'm honest to the point of fault, meaning if we're ever wrong about something, like I'm happy to admit it. And then, internally I can tell you, like, I'm very honest with people internally as well about where I feel things need to go. So Tyler Bishop at Ezoic.com. You can email me directly. I'm on Twitter at Tyler Bishop. Got that one snagged early on, as I mentioned before. And then if you're just getting started, the Ezoic blog is a really good resource, but I just started a site called the Internetary, and I'm putting up a lot of really interesting stuff about online marketing. Some of the stuff definitely pertains to publishers, but a lot of it your audience would probably find interesting as well. So those are the resources that I'd point people to. And yeah, like I said, if you're like, something about that guy just doesn't seem right, I don't trust him, feel free to send me an email. There's no questions you can ask me that I won't have a good or honest answer for.
Yep, and I appreciate that very much. So people can get in touch with Tyler if they want to do that or follow along with what he's doing. But Tyler, just once again, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Spencer. It's been fun. And good luck with everything else that you've got going on. And good luck to all the publishers out there growing your sites. And hopefully, whether you use Ezoic or not, it's, a fruitful rest of 2020 and hopefully 2021 as well.
Absolutely. Yep. Appreciate it.